Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so delighted today to be part of a panel where we're going to talk about how hybrid approaches to reach HCPs that combine face-to-face with digital deliver more impact to brands. I have an absolute pleasure to welcome our panelists, Alana Darden-Powell, Vice President, Marketing, Urology, Sumitomo Pharma America, Enes Otak, Head of Global Tail Products, Strategy and Content, Viatris, and Marcus Hinderberger, founder of CX Models, former leader at Bristol Myers Squibb. I would like to reinforce that the opinions of our panel are those of our speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of any entities or their employers. And with that, I am delighted to bring up the slides. And I'd like to share with you and open up the panel with some cutting edge data that we have just completed and that I hope will frame our conversation today. So this is data that was just completed. Indegene sponsored this with GLG Research. It's 100 participants. It is both a U.S. as well as an EU and global participation, about roughly a third, and a third. And it really gets at trying to understand from industry leaders what are some of the factors driving hybrid and omni-channel models. And so the first thing that's really interesting is understanding what the motivations are around adoption of some of these new models. And so when we think about a hybrid model, which is really integrating face-to-face and digital, the top three reasons why companies are moving to deploying these hybrid models are really customer centric. It's to improve access to HCPs, which is really compelling. We know that we've got amazing medications, but unless we can reach an HCP, we won't be able to help them achieve their full impact in terms of connecting into customers or into patients. We also know that the second reason why why industry is moving into these new models are really to enhance the customer experience. And then lastly, what they're seeing is our customers' behavior is changing. So if our customers are changing, it means we have to change as well. So these are the top three factors that we've heard from 100 industry leaders as to why companies and why industry is making a change into these more hybrid models. But we also know that they're facing some challenges. And I know that our panelists today are going to be able to bring real world solutions and practical tips on how to overcome some of these challenges. Top three challenges that our industry is facing are really around data and integrity and actionability of data, breaking data free from internal silos and making it usable. Also demonstrating the ROI and attribution. How do you really bring a complex channel approach together and really figure out which ones are driving which one and how to attribute that? And then most importantly, and a little bit of a surprise for me, is cross-functional collaboration was the third barrier. But when I took a step back and thought about, okay, the top two barriers are really about the data. You have to work with so many different teams around data. Around the attribution is the second biggest challenge. And so it's not really that much of a surprise when you think about the various teams that you have to work through, that cross-functional collaboration is the third barrier that we need to work through. And again, I'm thrilled to have this this panel with us today to really bring their tips and some insights into how they're navigating. If you go to the next slide, it's interesting because I think that the understanding and adoption of these new models is somewhat immature. So the next question we asked was, how are companies leveraging digital and reps in a hybrid model? And what does it mean to your company? So if you look at this, I mean, it's fascinating. We had a real breadth of responses. So a quarter of companies think that hybrid means that it's field sales reps using rep-triggered digital channels to engage HCPs. Almost another quarter say, no, actually it's field sales reps using HQ-driven digital channels. You get a whole mix of answers. So this tells me that it's somewhat immature. So when we say hybrid, it might mean different things to different companies. Only 11%, this is notable, only 11% think of hybrid as really integrating across sales and medical. So that's an interesting aha, which we're going to explore further with the panel. If you go to the next slide, what is when we explored what does it mean to say omni-channel and what does it mean to say hybrid, if you look on the left, the question was, is there a common understanding of the difference between omni-channel and multi-channel across your company? You got different responses there. And then also, thinking about, is there a mandate to make this change in companies? There seems like there is a mandate, but yet the way that we understand it may be different. And so there's an opportunity to grow our maturity and understanding. And then if you go to the next slide, this is a great slide because it really illustrates the point that we're still in early days of really understanding what we mean when we say omni-channel. So this was an open-ended question across 100 respondents, and we asked them to write in, what is omni-channel? Well, I think I see some big words popping: customer, channels, across, but that tells me that it's not yet fully understood and not yet a fully mature capability. And so we have an opportunity to bring some clarity together today with this panel as we explore further around what it means to be a hybrid omni-channel model. And with that, I'm going to ask if we can take down the slides and bring on the panel. And I'm going to ask Alana to introduce herself, and then Enes, and then we're going to go to Marcus, and we're going to get started.
Wonderful. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Enes and Marcus. My name is Alana Darden-Powell, and I am, as Nancy mentioned earlier, Vice President of Urology Marketing at Sumitomo Pharma America. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, my name is Enes Osuk. I am the head of global tail brands in Viatris. Tail brands are simply the mature brands in our portfolio. So I have been working in pharmaceutical industry for the last 23 years in different positions, mostly sales and marketing, regional, local, and global roles. And I'm just joining to the call from the UK, where I have been living for the last 7 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Enes, and hello, Ilana, and then certainly good morning, Nancy. Great to see you. And my background, and as you mentioned, I just opened up CX Models, which means mobilizing omnichannel digital experiences for life sciences, a company that I just started, but more importantly, in my experience with Bristol Myers Squibb, 23 years, sales, marketing for over 10 years across some major brands in hematology and oncology, and then building out global capabilities. It was an exciting time for me at BMS, but more importantly now to share that experience with everyone else.
Terrific. So we've got a ton of experience on this panel. So Alana, I'm going to open it up and ask you I think, a really important question. So, traditionally when we're establishing like the size of a new sales team for a new product launch, and you're definitely a new product launch, you tend to look at the number of HCP prescribers, the volume of prescriptions that they generate. You also consider, a lot of factors like productivity of a sales professional in geography, the footprint limitations, the amount of, rep workload, amount of calls required. A lot of different factors go in. And do you think that still holds up today? You've recently launched. Do you think those are the right factors today? What else would you add?
I do think they're the right factors today, Nancy. I would back up a little bit, though, and just say really having a detailed understanding of the patient journey is critical before you begin to start that process. And the reason I say that is because, obviously, patients may encounter multiple specialties of physicians or nurse practitioners, physician assistants that can trigger a conversation that can lead to treatment. But, understanding that dynamic and the timing of that dynamic is really critical in building your first sales team and then planning for kind of future expansions. So when I think about the things that you mentioned, I say yes, and I say the other thing is you need to understand of the physicians that the patient will encounter, or the HCPs that the patient will encounter, who are the thought leaders as it relates to building standard of care and pushing demand into the payer community? I think the important thing you have to consider is you're making a foundational investment as it relates to coverage in your first 1 to 2 years. So pushing demand is really, really critical. If you have a very productive physician base. So you're going first to those that see the most patients, have the most opportunity. That's going to push the most demand to make payers listen and consider if it's worth their while to just make it easier on their end to get the product covered. And then, from that point on, once you become better covered and once you have a standard of care that's accepted by the thought leaders in that category, I think pivoting to some of the lesser productive categories or treaters become the next step. The other thing that I would add, though, Nancy, and I think it kind of fits into the omni-channel topic, is I'm a big proponent of thinking of the HCP base as a consumer, because we're all consumers, right? And we all have consumer behaviors that are different, impacted by the environmental demands and the drivers and the barriers of our given day. So I say that because, I think in pharma, it's been a slow transition to really realize that we can address our customers very similarly to most every other market out there. And, I think you have to realize if you're building a brand versus building a product, a brand is experiential. A product is transactional. And for that reason, I believe that it's really critical. The human connection is really critical. So I continue to be a huge proponent of the field sales representative. I think the experience that is created through human to human interaction cannot be beat. And as more moves digital and less is in person in our given lives day to day, having that foundational experience really begins to set up the beliefs and the behaviors of the customer. However, other media channels such as emails, EMR, digital, social are important because they all have a role to reinforce awareness, to reach a customer at a point where they can contextually take in different information for consideration. So I'm really pleased to see the industry moving in this direction. I think it's far late, but I think it just makes a whole lot of sense, especially with the increasing demands and the day-to-day schedule of an HCP. So hopefully that makes sense and answers your question.
It answers it beautifully. And I think it really, points to the fact that our customers are changing. They have complexity they're trying to navigate. And so, just taking a rep or just taking a digital channel isn't going to be sufficient. You've got to really bring these things together. And so omni-channel, I'm going to ask Enes the next question. It's clear that, omni-channel, and from the data we shared, it's still, not really clear. It's still early in the maturity in terms of understanding it. So can you share your perspective on why that is and what we can do to bring more clarity and understanding?
Thank you very much for the question, Nancy. So I agree that there is no one single common definition of omnichannel among the different leaders, either in Europe or the US. Maybe this is because actually, if you just check the definition of omni in a dictionary, and then you see that it means all. And some might think that, hey, the difference between the multi-channel and the omni-channel is multi is more than one, and then you are just getting more than one channel integrated, and with omni it is all, which is not correct. I believe there are more important aspects of omni-channel which we need to identify the definition over here. So that's why when I'm just discussing with my colleagues and trying to explain them what omnichannel is, I'm just taking them into a journey, starting with the single channel. Obviously, there's only one channel, and most of the time it is a face-to-face call by a rep. And then a multi-channel, more than a number of channels over there working together. It can be a website, it can be email, it can be a call, whatever. But this is not enough for us to have, because those channels should be working together. So at the end, if all the channels are working in silos, we are not creating such a big impact over there. And that's why, so I am a rep, I'm visiting a healthcare professional. After my visit, I'm sending a rep triggered email. Within the rep triggered email, there is a click with that click, I'm just taking them to my website. On the website, there is an on-demand video. And if all these are working together, it is omnichannel, right? Now, it is still not enough, because whether even you are just making all those channels working together, this can be cross-channel model only. But if you are just, getting some feedback from your customers about their beliefs and the behaviors or the preferences, and if you are tailoring your model based on their preferences, then it can be an omnichannel model. Let's remember the journey we were discussing. You got your SCP to your website. There's an on-demand video. They watched the on-demand video, and then there is a survey. You're asking questions based on their responses to questions. You are tailoring either the channel or the content within your model. Then it becomes an omnichannel model for me. This is the definition I'm just making.
Oh, Enes, it's a great definition. I am very much aligned to your definition of omnichannel as being the channels connected, the channels coordinated, having the right, and it's not just the channels, but also the content and the cadence, so that ultimately the customer gets a great experience. I think we've got some more work to do to get that definition established. So Marcus, you're sitting over there and you've got broad experience, and I'm curious, when you hear that definition for omnichannel, do you consider rep as part of that mix, or how are you thinking about omnichannel? And when you think about how you measure omnichannel, is reach or engagement more important when you think about going and building a commercial model?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. And this is a topic I love to engage in, and certainly with omnichannel, I think there's a point of differentiation for most organizations is how they clearly define what omnichannel is. Just listening to Enes, and I think driving that differentiation will support the brands and the experiences that we want to have with the customers. And so I think it's a great topic for us as it relates to the question with rep. Absolutely, representatives need to be part of the omni-channel strategy. It's a channel, and it's a phenomenal channel that has been very valuable, that delivers experiences. And so when you think of representatives, they have to be within the omni-channel strategy. And more importantly, you need the data. There needs to be a digital first strategy as it enables the field teams. And when you think about field team members, their value every time they make a call, an interaction, it's like research. It's like some information that you want to get back into your data house so you can learn more about the customers, and therefore maybe you can glean more insights to how you can engage or benefit them the way they're engaging with customers, or within marketing teams to think about what are some other approaches that they can be engaging with that customer. So I look at it, there's thousands and thousands of calls on every single day by field teams. They create a positive experience, or could be a negative experience. We need to learn from that. How do we glean from that and learn from that to support what the future state needs to be? And omnichannel, from my perspective, Nancy, is really that customer journey and what the channels that are being used to create the experience. And that's what ultimately is the customer experience. Now, the other question, how do you measure? I believe you asked me that question. How do we measure success, or how do we pull that in? There's a lot of different measurements to see how omni-channel's working, or hybrid ways of working, and how with field. And that's where, if you're a small organization or big organization, small brand, big brand, what resources are needed, but what your goals and objectives are in your brand planning is critically important to then define what the measurements need to be and what KPIs to use. Specific down to a doctor level. But when you look at the experiences, there's been some good research done. DT Consulting does some really nice research to understand the experience of the interactions. You need to benchmark how your organization compares to other organizations, and then get more into the micro levels to understand, your interactions and how you are using those data points. But certainly when you think of customer satisfaction scores or net promoter scores, those are some good measures that you could use to support your engagement levels. So hopefully that answers the questions. But to your original question about field, there has to be a great connection. Your marketing leaders and your sales leaders need to be working hand in hand underneath one omni-channel strategy.
All right, so you've heard it here, folks. Omnichannel includes a rep, it includes channels, it includes content, it includes experience, it includes connected data, and data in service of gaining insight and also driving action. So great feedback from the panel. Thank you for bringing that clarity. So Lana, another point in the survey showed that there's several potential barriers to success in omnichannel. Can you share your perspective on how you've navigated and built support for new commercial models internally?
Sure, thanks, Nancy. And I'll double click a little bit on what Marcus was saying, because I think the important thing of organizational change is making sure that you are being transparent. So at least in my experience, and I can go back to many moons ago when I was a representative, and there's always this kind of conspiracy theory about Big Brother and about the data that's being taken from you as a rep, and what decisions are being made by that. And it always felt like what was missing was just information. I think people are um, much more trusting if they understand what the data that they're taking from you is being used for, and perhaps given back to them to show them how they can better take a next step. And so I think organizational change is probably the number one barrier. And I think in my mind, that can be really approached with a trust building, uh, data share methodology. This is not something that is meant to replace a rep. It's meant to be enhancing to the engagement that the representative has. So I say bring folks under the hood, bring them along, give them the opportunity to input, provide some qualitative advice based on what you're seeing, and bring them along with you. Let them help build the engagement. The second is really ROI, and I know Marcus was talking about that. One of the things, as you begin to build your omni-channel infrastructure and you're pulling all your pieces together, I think there's this tendency at a higher level to want to have a pure positive ROI for each channel before you pull it together into your infrastructure. And one of the things that I think is very well understood in consumer marketing is every channel has a different goal. Some channels are really awareness reinforcement. So the impression really goes a long way, and it really does what it's supposed to do. It may not be getting click-through rates, but it's giving you the kind of subtle awareness extension that you're looking for. So I think building that awareness in-house and trying to get a really precise or at least acceptable synergy model so that people understand pure attribution is one thing, but the synergistic approach of everything together is really what you're looking for with omnichannel. And so, my fear is always having things be cut before you get it together in an omnichannel measurement platform where you can showcase it. It needs time, needs expectation management. And then just the infrastructure. I think building the infrastructure comes with its challenges financially and from a capability standpoint. So it takes time. It's not going to be an overnight win. It takes time to get it built in the right way. And once you kind of lay that foundation, you've got the opportunity to scale from here. So, I think just ROI, organizational change, and infrastructure building are probably the three things that I find most challenging.
It sounds like you've been able to navigate and thank you for sharing your tips in terms of how to approach and how to build support internally for new commercial models. So Ennis, you talked about bringing face-to-face and digital together. You kind of talked about like Omni is all channels, or is it? And it's about getting feedback from your customers and making choices and changes. You made it sound really easy to do. So some harder questions for you. If you have a brand already in the market and it's underperforming, how do you determine which channels to use from all the channels that you have? And then also, if you are about to launch a new product into the market, what factors are critical that you think have to be taken into consideration in terms of which channels you go to market with?
Well, Indeed. Okay, very good two questions. Most of the time, we marketers are just thinking about these things. And related with the underperforming brands, I don't think I have a direct answer for the underperforming brands. These are the preferred channels. Actually, a root cause analysis should be made. So you just need to ask too many questions over there. Maybe you are not targeting the right customers, and then okay, all your communication for nothing. Maybe you are targeting the right customers, but your message is not robust enough to convince them. Maybe your message is good, but it's not perceived well by your customers because they do want to hear it from someone else, not from you, maybe from a key opinion leader. Maybe everything works fine. Your target is right, your message is good, the perception is great, but the number of the messages you are giving, the touch points, is simply not enough. You just need to repeat the same thing. So as this changes for each brand in each market, the marketers should be sitting together, making a root cause analysis for the underperforming business. And it is only available if you are going to have a customer journey from A to Z. This is not only for the healthcare professionals. Depending on the brand, the type of the brand and the market, maybe you need it for the patients. You need it for the caregivers or the pharmacists or any other stakeholder, and you can just define the root cause and you can just, pick the right content and the channels accordingly. For a new launch brand, so it's not going to be the root cause analysis because you don't have the brand in the market and you're not performing at all. But it is very similar, the way I'm going to answer your question. You, again, need to put the customer journey over there, depending on which stakeholder we are talking about, and you are going to find the leverage points. And based on those leverage points, you can just pick the right channels and the content. Just imagine you are launching a new product, all right, in a new disease area. You need to speak with your customers about the disease area, the diagnosis, the complications, if it is not treated well. Or if it is very well-known disease area, but a new treatment, it is something else. Or if it's a Me Too product over there, after, the 20 years, after they just, found the statins, you go there, but you're just talking about not the disease diagnosis and etc. You create a value for your brand over there, and the channel content will change significantly over there. So here, one size does not fit all. You just need to tailor your channels based on the unmet needs and the market circumstances.
And I heard you always anchor around a customer, which is such a great way to problem solve and do those root causes. So it's a really powerful way to think about it. So then if you were, you've obviously done some of these root cause analyses. And one of the questions we always get is, what's better, a rep triggered email or an HQ marketing delivered email? Do you have a point of view on that from all these root cause analyses in your experience?
Actually, we measured this, and then we measured if whether RTEs or headquarter-driven marketing email is more impactful. And I can just tell you that based on our analysis, rep-triggered email is far more impactful when you are comparing with the mass emails for one brand. We are talking about one brand, one customer, and the RT is more impactful. But if you just, ensure two critical success factors over there. One, your customer, the healthcare professional, should know who is sending that email. So if the rep is not known by the doctor, actually it's not a rep-triggered email anymore. And the second, we find a significantly better open and click-through rate when the rep sending an email before or after a call or an event, but not out of nothing. So, hey, a thank you email. Doctor, thank you very much for your time during our call today. Or missed your email. Hey, doctor, I was just planning to discuss with you the blow point, but we couldn't have our call. Or, before call. Hey, doctor, as just we agreed that tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm going to give you a call to discuss this. or after a webinar or an on-demand video. Hey, doctor, I just noticed that you have attended to our webinar about this and that. The open rate and the click-through rates are far, far higher than anything else. But if the rep is just okay in the middle of the night while watching the Game of Thrones, I want to send this email, we don't see that impact. Are there any brands which we can have a greater impact for the mass email? Yes, if you just consider the total, not for one customer. Just like I said that, so for some brands, especially for the ones at the latest stages of life cycle, the reach is a more important component than the depth of your engagement. So instead of sending one very impactful rep-triggered email for those brands, you can just send 10 mass emails, because always the number of the emails we should just send from the headquarter-driven marketing emails, bigger, larger numbers, and then you can just have a greater impact over there. So for the customers we are visiting with our sales reps, the RTEs are better. For the non-visited customers, you can still consider the headquarter-driven marketing email.
That was a complex answer. And what I'm taking away from that, we think through our framework that we use is 4 C's, customer, channel, content, and cadence. And from what you just said, I'm thinking about nominating a 5th C, which is coordination, because you made a really powerful point about if a rep goes out and then they follow up with a touch, or then there's a coordinated, integrated delivery of other follow-up touches, it has a higher impact. And so that really speaks to the need for coordination across all channels, and potentially coordination across your partner system or your internal team. So I'm going to make the case, wish me success in adding a 5th C, which is coordination. I think there's a lot of insight in that. So Marcus, as we're moving through and thinking about, it's not just about hybrid, but it's about effective hybrid and omni-channel approaches. So what do you think are the most important metrics to define success in service of having an effective commercial model?
Yeah, it's an outstanding way of looking at driving success in the commercial space, Nancy. I'm going to go back and reference a little bit with Ines. I will say, bringing some sort of meat to the bone on that, understanding how you internally look at your open rates for your emails. You want to benchmark those against what other organizations' open rates are. And there's some good organizations you can kind of capture some of the RTEs and what those open rates are, and benchmark it, because you may feel happy with a 20% open rate, but then your organization next door maybe have 40%. And so it comes back to marketing. You say, what is the right content that you need to be putting in there to address that? So I think RTEs are absolutely, and I totally agree with you, are very valuable. And I had some experience launching in the hematologic space doing that. And when the organization takes away a sleeve of field team members, and then you have to really think differently about how you're going to be engaging with customers, we did that. And we went, full digital, thinking patient profiles, thought leader engagement with videos, small snippets. The open rates of those emails were phenomenal. And then you target them to the right targets and understand those customers. So I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to reinforce your points there, Anna. So thank you for sharing that. As it relates to answer your question on, how do we measure the success? I think there's a lot of different variables that need to go into what does success really look like, and what are your, again, goals and objectives for the commercial model. And what's your budget? What does that look like that you could enable? And I bring back to my experiences as a brand. Sometimes you're not going to have the full budget to have all the resources available to you. And so you have to really think about, what other approaches. And when you think of a hybrid approach, we have taken an approach where we used telemarketing or inside sales, and we use them to partner with the field teams. And it wasn't an approach where we would say, hey, go out there and sell the product in inside sales. No, partner with your field teams to gain greater access into the customers so you can have in-services. And those approaches worked really well, but the goal of the inside sales was different from that of the field team members, and we incented that in an appropriate way. When we did the KDA, key driver analysis on that, we found that those representatives that engaged greater with their inside sales teams had higher share. And the reason probably would go beyond just that of their engagement with their inside sales teams, but they had greater access into their customers and really try to drive a lot of the success that you would see. So how you measure that is important. But the incentives are critically important as well, the way I look at that, Nancy. And going back to the experience, and you talked about coordination, I'm going to reference a paper that you and I both wrote. Relevancy, responsiveness, and coordination is the ultimate experience that customers want to have. Relevancy is the information that is right for them. Responsiveness is the means that you can get the information to them in an appropriate manner that will fit their needs. And the coordination is that's really comes down to making sure left hand and right hand know what they're doing and the way they're engaging with the customer. We expect it as consumers, they should expect it as HCPs, and it really comes down to that personalization. So hopefully I answered your question and a little bit more too than what you had asked.
Oh, you did beautifully. I think you really imparted a lot of wisdom and gave some great perspective in terms of some of the metrics to look at and how to really think about how do you drive personalization through relevance, coordination, and responsiveness. So thank you for that. I'm mindful that I could keep talking about this all day, and I think with all the wisdom on this panel, I believe we're bringing some clarity to the topic. But I'd like to ask, given all the experience that you have, for the people that are watching and dialing in today or listening to this in 6 months when they're going through some internal, making the business case and thinking about some choices and some, some decisions ahead in terms of commercial model, what's a final piece of advice you'd like to share? I'm going to ask Alana, then Ennis, and then Marcus. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Nancy. I'd say start with pilot group. I think as you get your infrastructure built and you begin to plug in your sales teams and that final channel kind of plug in, the organizational change piece, I think, can really be met with a smaller test control where you're showing success. And I'm a full believer that it will show success. I think you show one sales team the benefits that another sales team have received from engaging in an omnichannel approach. You're hard pressed to find a salesperson that doesn't want to have every resource that their other team has, right? So that to me is one way to build trust and to build belief. It's also a way to build belief at a C-suite level so that you can begin to pour more investment to something that's starting to prove itself at a small scale. And then lastly, I think we talked about this before, but the process of becoming better at contextual relevance takes time and market. It takes learning from what you're seeing and tweaking and getting better and getting the ahas along the way. And I think if you can begin to do that in a pilot and then take those learnings to your next larger scale launch within your organization, it just creates an even better excitement around how the engagement's improving. So pilots would be my recommendation.
Great. Start small and scale up and manage the change. That's great advice. Ennis.
Thank you. I believe at the end, just like general marketing, when we are building up either hybrid or the omnichannel models, we should be asking the right questions to ourselves, and we need to understand very well why we are doing this. So what is it we want to change with the beliefs and the behaviors of our customers, how we are going to attract them so we can just contact with them, how we are going to educate them with the disease, how we are going to engage them to convince them about our brand messages, how we are going to support them for them to see us as a partner, and etc. And then you can just find the best content strategy, the best communication and the channel strategy, and you can just put everything together. But first, everything should be beginning with this, asking the right questions. That's how you can just build up and individualize, but also for each brand, for each market, different brand plans over there, as well as the omnichannel marketing plans. So that's going to be my advice.
That's great. Start with why and then use that to inform where you go. I love it. Marcus.
So absolutely, I agree with Anana and as well as Enes. What I'll say is, assuming that we have true leadership support, organizational investments, and capabilities, meaning people, process, technology, data. Large organizations, small, keep it simple when you first start and very clear on what your objectives are and look to grow quick. I'll tell you, develop an ability to learn. You know, customers are going to change. Never believe that the customer, you're all done, you're good. The experience is always something you have to challenge yourself with, and you never should be satisfied as a marketer. Be flexible and with agility in the way you're working the setup, and then focus on digital first strategy and anchored in data and analytics. I mean, that is the new realm. You have to become really, really comfortable with that. And don't be afraid. You know, I think you got to go for it. But I'll go back to assuming you have leadership support. When I mean support, you have the investments, you have their backing to better support the way you're moving. And then the capabilities are there to be built and developed. I think it could deliver a really strong omni-channel experience for the whole organization. So Nancy, I appreciate the time.
Incredible insights from a really, really seasoned and thoughtful panel. I'd like to thank all of you for really sharing your wisdom with us today. And for those of you in the audience, we're going to be sharing the full data set on our hybrid data coming soon, middle of this month. And so really hope that you will look for that data and that it helps you as you internally start to build the case and really drive forward around our new go-to-market models that include face-to-face and digital as part of a hybrid omni-channel. Thank you all so much. Appreciate your time and have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of the digital summit.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.